Righto, let me ask you this before I get on to some other stuff. The AFL General Manager of Football position is open. Brad Scott was the man. Now, Brad Scott is the coach of the Essendon Footy Club. That dropped late last week. We'll talk about that in a minute. But there is a vacancy that your name has been attached to. You know I'm not into muckraking or anything else. You're here, you're in front of me, so I'm going to ask you, have you got any interest in that job?
It's one that I've sort of looked at over the years.
I think you'd be great, by the way. Just hand on heart. If I didn't think you'd be any good, I'd tell you. I reckon you'd be great.
Well, I don't know exactly what the...
Neither do I, but I still think you'd be great.
Yeah, the key traits you would need for it. I think you'd need to be able to handle the press really well, first and foremost. You need to understand the game and make good decisions in regards to how it's played.
You need to be smart. You need to have a broad view of footy. You need to be able to...
Solid relationships throughout the industry.
And build relationships throughout the industry. You tick all that, and I'm not being an idiot, you tick all those boxes. Brad Scott had done some study, I think, outside of his footy.
He'd done an MBA. So
was that post his coaching, though?
I think he'd done it during.
Okay.
Yeah, so
you haven't answered the question yet?
It's not. It's something that I've thought that it's a job that I thought that it would be good to do down the track. Look, my personal circumstances probably. I'm really comfortable in the media for the next couple of years. But I would. It's something that I would definitely work towards. I need to do some more study, I believe. But there'd be some interest in looking.
So there's a little thread there. So I'm going to just tug it a bit.
Yeah.
So you're interested enough in it. If they were to ring you and ask you to come in and have a chat to them about this role right now, would you do it? Go and have that chat.
Yeah, look, I would look at it, but I would need to know. I suppose it would be me sort of working out exactly where the gaps are between where I'm at and where I need to be for it, and to understand a little bit more about what the actual role entails. I think we sort of see it from the outside. So look at Steve Hocking and Brad Scott, who have been the last two people in the job. And I think that they've both been great operators in what they've done. Adrian Anderson, way back when I was a player, early days as a coach, was in that role. Like, how much autonomy do you have? I'd be interested to know whether you sort of become a bit of a figurehead at the front of these decisions. Because I've been involved in some of these panels that the AFL run at the back end, and I don't feel like they've had any real influence at that.
Well, you'd certainly say, given Steve Hocking's influence, and then there is a level of autonomy that would be of interest to you, and also I think Brad Scott as well. I think they've both been champions of change throughout the past couple of years, so I would imagine that's the case.
And it's largely gone from an administrative role to administrative background to a football background. So I think you need some understanding and have a wealth of experience in different roles in the football industry to be able to do it. But
you'd take the call
to have an idea on to have some influence on the way the game is set up, the way the actual game is played, and the things surrounding the game. I've always been interested in that.
Righto, that's good. I think that's a good answer, and I reckon you should take the call. At least find out if, in fact, they make that call. Hey, we wake up this morning and our man, Calculating Kel Toomey from AFL.com.au, has broken this story last night that Jason Horne-Francis has gone to the North Melbourne Football Club. This is the number one draft pick last year and requested a trade back to Port Adelaide. So Brady Rawlings and North Melbourne have acknowledged that has been the case. They subsequently put out a release and a statement saying, yes, that's what he wants, and now we'll have a look at it and see whether we can get a deal done. How does that make you feel if you're a North supporter?
I think.
And let us know if you're a North supporter.
At the moment, for North supporters, there is so much that you're dealing with. You know, the David Noble and the trauma of not performing at the level that you want to, losing your coach. Obviously Ben Cunnington's stuff throughout the last couple of years, and then he's come back. There was some feel goods there. Jason Horne-Francis has been pushed up and speculated upon. Clarko comes in, and now you're, through no fault of your own as such, as an organisation, the North Melbourne Football Club, you're embroiled in one of the biggest stories the game's seen for a while. So, and the uncertainty about whether or not Alistair Clarkson will coach when he starts, or when he can start, or if indeed he starts at all. Yeah, well, and then one of the questions I'd have is, okay, so right here, right now, does Alistair Clarkson get involved in what's happening with Jason Horne-Francis? He's not supposed to be working till November 1 anyway because of his Hawthorn contract. But then you've got the issue around
So he stood down
the allegations and being stood down. Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot that is left to grey area question marks. But Horne-Francis has been an ongoing issue for the club throughout the 12 months. He hasn't been comfortable. They haven't been winning.
They haven't been comfortable with him. He got dropped.
It hasn't been. It's been well speculated on, hasn't it?
Lack of professionalism. Well, not professionalism, but still very much in the learning phase of where he needs to get to be an AFL player. So he was sent back to the VFL to understand the standards.
Which is the same as every first. Well, not that those circumstances don't necessarily happen, but he's been well scrutinised, and the number one pick gets a higher level of scrutiny than most, even than the number two pick. So you do get speculated on, and we build up these products, we build up these kids right now. So we're talking about Will Ashcroft. I mean, Nick Dacos got built up, but he's produced. But very rarely do these young players have the capacity to deliver on where the pedestal that they're put on. Yeah. They're 18-year-old kids that are coming into a system that they haven't been exposed to before.
That's true. He also put his hand up and said, I want to be the number one draft pick. I want to be the number one man. So that puts a bit more pressure on you.
Well, wanting to and being capable of are two different things. Yeah, and he's still working.
But understanding that is going to bring some pressure and media attention to it.
So how do you handle this if you're North? What do you think you would, if you've got you've spent your first round pick on a player, you've had him for 12 months, it's been a traumatic experience for both the club and player. Mm-hmm. How do you approach this? There would definitely be an idea of, at some point, my family are in Adelaide, my father played for Port Adelaide. If I got the chance to go back, stepfather, and if I get the chance to go back there, I'd love to go back there. But I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that option and possibility was always in the kid's mind. I mean, but I mean, I've been in that position. You go look when I was on Brisbane's list by default, ended up going there, and by the time you put your head in the hole, all you want to do, you're experiencing AFL for the first time. You're playing at a level that you haven't played at before. And I get the sense that Horne-Francis is someone who just wanted to test himself and believed in his football ability. And he discovered a lot about himself this year, where he was good and where he fell short. And that's the natural part of growth and development. But I'm absolutely sure when he put the North Melbourne Guernsey on and went out to play, he was giving his very best. And that's all you can ask for.
And isn't it interesting, we had some stats on Geelong and what their expectations is. And mind you, they haven't had a first-round pick since Joel, so their expectations of their players are different because they've come later in the draft. But we are firmly told when they're drafted that you expect to play some VFL footy and quite a bit of it whilst you establish yourself. Now, given that they've got a strong AFL team, then that we understand that to be the case. So I don't mind Jason Horne-Francis going back to the VFL and playing games last year for North Melbourne because it's held some of the best players of all time in good stead over the journey. Now, that may not meet and match his expectation, which leads us to now. What do? Well, I think they deal. North Melbourne. They do the best deal they possibly can.
Would you take first round of this year and a first round of next year?
Yeah, I reckon that'd be a good starting point for sure. And then all the stuff around it, you can play with some semantics and maybe players or future pick or seconds and thirds, all that sort of stuff.
I find it like this is the game within a game, the trade period, and it's really interesting to see how different clubs handle it. The best operators that I've witnessed and observed in my time are ones that they're prepared to do the deal. They don't try and get blood out of the stone. If it's around the ballpark, they'll take it. They won't sit holding out for turning a third rounder into a second rounder if they believe that they've got value for what they're looking for, and they'll take the win-wins and then move on to the next. And that'll be North's challenge. Like how much do you want to run this? And it's up to Port as well to give what they feel is what North feel is a fair deal on the table also.
And your earlier point was just so. It had just got you thinking, what's Alistair Clarkson's role in this?
Yeah.
And it's a great question because of just how grey and unknown. Like if he's your coach nominally right now anyway, and he turns around and says, no, under any circumstances, how much weight's that going to have with the player and with the club?
And if you're the North Melbourne Football Club board, you've made this stance that you're actually doing the right, think you're doing the right thing here and standing him down. Like, so how much is he included in all of this?
So the reality would be that if you don't do it, you've got a disgruntled player there against his will, and you've seen that he can't handle. Well, no, it shouldn't be fair. We've seen him struggle with some of that last year anyway.
Yeah.
Add the fact that he wants out publicly, and you've denied him, then the prospects of him clearing out at the end of next year is sky high anyway, and you lose some of your bargaining power. So, and people get caught up. Oh, he's our number one pick. Yep. I get it. Is there a difference between 1 and 5, 1 and 6? Given that Ashcroft's going anyway.
Well, if you're North Melbourne, I think you don't talk a player into being with you. You don't talk anyone into being. It's a privilege to be a part of an AFL organisation, and if you buy into us, well, then we'll buy into you. But if you don't want to be here, that's fine. But we need to do the right thing for our club and for the people that do want to be here and give them the best chance to succeed. So we need fair compensation for the number one pick that we spent on you, or that we invested in you 12 months ago, or in this player 12 months ago, and the 12 months of time that you've put into him. If you put a dollar amount on what goes into each sort of recruit over a 12-month period, it's not an insignificant investment. So
no, it's not.
So North Melbourne now, they need to make the best decision for their organisation.
Yep.
I think it starts at 2 first-rounders. If it's one this year and the future first, I think that's great. If you get a sweetener of a player and or a second rounder, I think you pull the trigger and you move on to the next.
The announcement of Brad Scott on Thursday, did it surprise you?
No, not really. I mean, I suppose it was done very well. It was quiet. His name hadn't been pushed up, and obviously there's a fair few reasons for that. He had a job to do and for the season to be completed. But for Essendon themselves to have had him along and it not been reported was surprising in itself.
That's a win.
And it was a win, and it shows operationally that there was some watertight spaces, or that things were kept confidential amongst that procedure through the Essendon coaching panel. So that was good, and I think, I mean, he's a great appointment. He's the wealth of experience that he gained through football as a player, and then assistant coaching through at Collingwood in the development space, and then senior coaching at North for 10 years. You sort of, that's a wealth of
experience.
Yeah, experience in different places, in different ways, from different perspectives to now bring to Essendon. So, and as he said himself in his press conference, he goes, I'll be better placed this time around than I was for my first crack.
Yeah, so Essendon get a man who's well experienced, who's passionate, who defends his territory like not few others, who defends his players.
The Scott boys are dogged. Yeah, they're dogged, and they've been brought up through that Brisbane area with success, and the way that they've become team players. I mean, They didn't succeed without that.
No. I think it's going to be good for that club. I think the players are going to appreciate having someone like him come in, and he'll wrap his arms around them, but he won't sugarcoat anything, and they'll know exactly where they stand. So Kevin Sheedy then, I don't know what the rush for Kevin Sheedy to come out and say that he voted for James Hird. Now, they didn't. My memory serves me. They didn't say it was a unanimous decision. It was
fully endorsed.
That's right, fully endorsed. Of which Kevin, I think, said, "Yeah, I voted for Hird, but I will now get behind Brad." That says to me that's fully endorsed. Kevin couldn't wait to get out and talk to the press to say, "Hey, I voted for Hird. I want it known," and they're saying that I'm a liar, or they're sending out stuff that's lying. Don't lie to the. What about that? That narrative and language.
Kevin Sheedy is a legend of the game. What he has done, what he's contributed to the game, cannot be questioned. But there are moments where the individual is put above the group, and that can never happen for a club or for a team to prosper. And I don't. They weren't done. I can't see how that was done with the interests of the Essendon Football Club today and going forward. And if you're a board member, if you're a senior coach, if you're a player, if you're a staff member, and you're not acting in the best interests of the organisation, well, then you need to check yourself in that regard. And I, as much as I love what Sheeds has given to the game, and and what he's contributed, I don't think that was a wise utterance coming straight out of the disharmony that's been at Essendon and still has to be sorted out.
That's the point that struck me. So you've got this faith and loyalty to James Hird, which is great. And that's what he was trying to impress upon everyone, that my loyalty to James, that's great.
Well, I think it was a call to arms for the Essendon faithful that are loyal to Hird and still loyal to him as well.
Yeah, but that
indicates it's bipartisan.
So at a time when this club's been pulled apart to a large degree, and there's a dissatisfaction everywhere, and the CEO's gone, and the coach is gone, the president. You want unity, so you're selling unity, and at the very first opportunity post the appointment of the coach is anything but. So that's where the disappointment comes from those around the Essendon Footy Club.
And when you say you want unity, that's not without challenge. That's not without rigour internally.
No,
but once the decision is made, then it is our decision. Yep. And for him to come out and say that's no longer the Essendon's board decision. It's not united because he's chosen to step outside of that. Now, Brad Scott, as a senior coach, comes in. This is not his to fix, but this was always going to be the challenge of the person who goes into that role. What are you stepping into? Yes. Now, it seems like Essendon are moving towards being more stable. They've still got to choose a CEO, and they've got their best and fairest tonight, I believe, and that may occur.
I think the whispers might have just been onto something last week along those lines, but go on.
So who is it? Well, who speculated?
I just, again, like I pulled the thread on you and the GM of football, I pulled a thread about Andrew Thorburn to the Whistler. He was just waxing lyrical about how great he'd been in this process. And I said, well, he could be a good CEO. And a little light bulb went off in his head. So, I don't know, we'll wait and see.
But that's just how
I don't know
the quality of your
my thread pulling,
your media thread pulling. That's the minimum you should get. But it actually, so this isn't for Brad Scott to go and fix. And people will think, right, this is the Messiah, it's Brad Scott. Like, is Alistair Clarkson going to go and fix North Melbourne? No. That shouldn't be his task. His task should be to go and coach the team and pull the football program together. Anything above him needs to be sorted out by the board, the CEO.
But you will
and Essendon still have work to do there.
Come out of his meetings where they would have been selling him unity. We were all on the same page. We are together. You won't get any more of this out. And then within 20 minutes, it's anything but.
How did he answer it? The question about Sheeds?
He said it's none of his business, basically.
Which is exactly how he needs to answer it. And this is part of being around the block a couple of times. Yeah. He'll know exactly how to answer it. He'll know what his remit is, where his focus needs to be. He won't be happy. But
I'm not a betting man, but I wouldn't mind having $1 on the fact that he picked up the phone to the president and said, "What the F is going on here?" That's just $1. Maybe a waste of $1.
I would even say there, for the senior coach to go past his director of footy and there's no CEO, so maybe it is a direct line with the president. But in the end,
he's in charge of the board.
What we think the connections are at a football club is not exactly as they, what we think they are is not as they actually are. And every club has a different environment and a different organisational profile.